Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Come Off Conqueror show. I'm your host, Bonnie, and you are now watching part 2 of the Debbie Comstock interview. To give you kind of a quick intro into what this video is about, this one we're talking about what to do after you figure out that you are in an abusive situation and the resources and the tools and the help and the people that are available to help you get out safely and what things are available to you, because many people leave these types of situations without any help. They don't have family or friends who can take them in, so they need to find shelter. They've got to figure out their finances. They have to figure out daycare and employment and what they're going to do for their kids. They need help with the legal system and navigating custody and a divorce and all of that. So we're going to discuss the resources and the things that are available to you when you leave your abusive situation. Hopefully you found episode number 1 helpful. If you are watching this before episode number 1, I highly suggest taking a pause and watching episode number 1. It's super informative. We discuss all the subtle signs of abuse and how to recognize that you're in an abusive situation and what to do when you figure that out, how to handle that, when to leave, if you should even leave, how to do that safely, and the different resources that are available to you in that leaving process. So if you're in a situation that's imminently dangerous, where your life is at risk or your children's lives are at risk, who do you call then? Maybe you're not in an immediate danger, but it's a pretty bad situation that could escalate quickly. What do you do then? And then the third category, which is I'm not in any danger, but I'm not ready to leave because emotionally, I just don't know if I could handle that. For whatever reason, what do you do in that situation? So that's at the end of part number 1. And this is the continuation of part 1, where we talk about you've left or you're about to leave. What are the resources and the help that you need to get out safely and to move on with your life and find healing? So without further ado, let me reintroduce you to Debbie, who is an expert in domestic violence and is an abuse advocate. She was a social worker for 30 years or something like that. She's on the board of for our state and for our county and for our local area for domestic violence coalitions, and on the board for our child protective services here in our state as well. So she is just knows everything there is to know about abuse and is a wealth of knowledge. So I'm sure you're going to find a lot of help and information in this episode. Please keep in mind that everyone's situation is different. And I highly recommend you talk to a professional. You don't just take our advice as gospel, that you go to speak with somebody in your area about the things that are available to you specifically in your state's laws. Okay, without further ado, here's Debbie. So to make the safety plan, we've talked about this a few times.
Yes.
We do that through the My Plan app, right?
The My Plan app has some excellent guidelines for helping you think about things you want to do for a safety plan. And it could be as simple right now, if you're concerned, to go to the bank and open an account in just your name and not tell him. And if there's money that comes to you, maybe you're putting it in there and putting less in the account he sees. But you need to start doing something to accrue some resources for yourself.
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up. Let's talk about resources for a minute.
Okay.
Because that seems to be the number one. I could be wrong, but one of the most, what did we talk about? How did we phrase it?
Needs.
One of the biggest reasons women don't leave or men don't leave, but a victim doesn't leave is because of lack of resources.
Right.
So I assume that the safety plan helps you figure out what resources you need and what resources you have let's talk about what resources people are going to need to leave, so that if you're kind of thinking in your head right now, viewer, is kind of describing my life, we do, let's calm me down a little bit. It's going to be okay. Just remember, God's got you. We've got you. It's going to be all right. Let's talk about a little bit about the things that you need to be thinking about right now. Again, don't say anything. Don't bring this up to your abuser. Just start being aware.
Yeah,
let's talk about the resources that someone's going to need.
Well, if you're going to walk out the door and stay somewhere else, you should have already made copies of all the important paperwork that's in your house, or birth certificates, your rental agreement or your mortgage agreement, any insurance cards, documentation of insurance, anything that your driver's licenses. You should have all of that together in one folder, and your important papers are somewhere else, not at your house.
Can you take pictures and put them on your phone, or do you need physical copies?
You could probably take pictures on your phone.
Okay. Because remember, if you leave and you go to the police can get you back into your home in a safe way. So just know too, that like, if you have to leave in a hurry, the police will get you back home. They'll escort you. Like, you can get things from your house again.
You can get a protective order, in which case, if you get one against your abuser, they will need to leave the premises and you'll be in the house.
Yeah. I've had situations where I know friends they left in such a huge hurry that in order to go back, like, the police went home with them to get like a change of clothes.
Right. Exactly.
They left literally with the clothes on their back and with the kids in the car, and they didn't have anything, no diapers, no nothing. And so the police went back with them to get those things. And then they went through the protective order process. So, okay. So paperwork, that's a really good one. Let's start making copies of that. Put them on your phone, a Google Drive, or get like a folder.
Copies of your restraining order or police reports or anything like that. Keep copies of it somewhere where you can have access to it.
Okay.
You just mentioned clothing.
Yeah.
If you anticipate that you're going to be away for a little while, think about bringing a couple of sets of clothes for each child and for yourself. Pack it in a suitcase, park it at somebody's house.
Extra medications, maybe?
Definitely. Medications are a must. And if that means that you take out the pills you need for the day and the others are kept somewhere else, so that if you needed to walk out the door, you picked up that bag with the pills and walked out the door.
Okay. So like make some sort of go bag.
Yes.
Hidden or something that has stuff like your toiletries and don't stress about too much of that.
No, don't stress about that too much. Your safety is more important. You can get that from a
grocery store.
Yeah.
But medications is what I meant by toiletries. But
I know. Okay.
If your kid needs diapers or formula or something like that.
Diapers and some formula.
Remember, you can always buy that from the grocery store too. So if you have to go fast, just remember you have access.
And if you feel the need to hide, these are the things you want to be aware of. Make an extra copy of your car key.
Okay.
Because if he takes your keys, or suddenly your keys are lost and he took them because he suspects you might leave, he thinks that he's been successful. Yeah. The reality is you have a key.
Oh, that's a good one. Okay. What about making arrangements to go somewhere?
If you're thinking that you want to go to a shelter, you need to get something safe, call a shelter.
Okay.
And say, this is what I'm doing. We're currently safe, but I can't stay where I'm at. I need to be in a shelter. So you could, you can call any of those organizations, YCC, that's your community connection in the Ogden-Weber area. And in Davis County, it's Safe Harbor. If you really and truly don't know what to do, you just call the Domestic Violence hotline. And I should have got that number for you, Bonnie.
That's okay. I'll put it down below. I link to it all the time. It's on
There's a national hotline, but that will link you right back to your state and to your area to tell you, what you need. There's been some law change with regards to being on a lease agreement with an abuser. That includes that if you are in an abusive relationship and you've needed to leave, maybe get a protective order, the landlord must let you off the lease. You cannot be held responsible. Now, there's a few nuances, so I wouldn't suggest that you just march right in and have them do that. This is when you may want to connect with a DV advocate.
Okay.
In any of those specific organizations, because they'll know the most current law with regards to that. But I did hear that the other day, that a woman said she'd been taken off the lease. The landlord was required to take her off the lease.
Is it a good idea to call a legal aid or legal hotline in addition to the DV advocate, or do you just need to call the legal hotline? In what order do you call them? Do you call them before you're thinking about leaving, after you left? Does it matter what order?
I would say if it's a safety thing, you just go.
Okay.
But there are services through Utah Legal Aid, Utah Legal Services. You can call them and get an appointment and talk with them about what's going on, and they can advise you what legal aspects you need to be aware of in leaving that relationship, including, if you're filing for separation, filing for divorce. If there's a protective order, they could represent you in court. In Davis County and Ogden, they each have a single day of the week where they handle protective orders. I can tell you about Davis County because I go there. There's a protective orders court, and there are DV advocates on site. Some have already linked in with Safe Harbor. Some have not. And we help them. There's a Utah Legal Aid person there, if they don't have representation, who can help represent them for the protective order, just for that. Okay. Now, if they want to continue to work with them, they have to make arrangements. And there is a financial aspect to that in terms of what you have available money-wise. They are free or sliding scale.
So is it safe to say that probably every state and every area has a protective order system and court day? So you could just call your area and ask the court, hey, do you do this? And what day is it at? And whatever.
Yes, you could contact your court and say, just ask, when are protective order hearings happening?
Okay.
And what courtroom? Because if you have enough time, I'm not going to tell you to do this in lieu of getting safe. But if you want to know what you're up against, if you find out when protective orders court is held, go sit in the courtroom and watch the process. Watch how an abuser suddenly turns very sweet, complacent, answering all the questions. And then how the attorneys present the evidence of what has actually happened. Yeah. I've seen women present themselves, and they do very well. If they have very good evidence, it's a slam dunk. They'll give them, the permanent order. They actually come in with a temporary order. And what you're trying to do is make that order permanent. And by permanent, I now mean the law's changed, and that's in place for 2 years.
2 years. Okay.
And then if she wants it dropped, they have to appear in court and ask for it to be dropped. And if you don't want it dropped, you'll be notified that there's a court hearing. So always keep the court up to date with where you're living. You can go to court and say, no, actually, I don't want that order dropped. And if he's saying, yeah, but I haven't done anything, Your Honor, it's been perfectly quiet, I have not violated this, you can say, see, Your Honor, it's working.
Yeah. So I have a question about DV advocates. How do you How do you get one? Like, let's say someone's listening to this video and they're thinking, gosh, I've got so many questions. I want to do a safety plan with somebody. Like, I want to
Yes.
talk to somebody. How do I get myself an advocate or someone I can talk to? Where do you find a resource like that?
Well, you need to know that there are two kinds of advocates.
Okay.
There's a community advocate, and then there is, I'm trying to think of the exact name. We'll just say a legal advocate, a community advocate. I don't think I'm using the right name, but
like court appointed.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Systems advocate. That's it. Now, when it's a systems advocate, you usually get connected with them because you walk in the door. You can look it up online and see where their office is.
Okay.
And you can go directly to their office and talk with them. Sometimes they need appointments. You may want to call ahead and ask to see if you need an appointment. They will administer the danger assessment. They will help you think about a protective order. I see them at protective orders court quite often because they will come there with the victim to support her. The thing you need to know about a systems advocate, though, is that information you give them is not held confidential. If they are asked information that supports the case for a conviction, they have to disclose that information. And that's not a bad thing, but you just need to know that there's a difference.
Not client, like, what is it? Client lawyer privilege or whatever.
Yeah, there's no privilege there. There's no privilege.
Okay.
And so you just need to know that. So they're some of the best advocates I know. And sometimes because they're attached to a city, the city has additional resources for victims of that city.
Okay.
And I know I refer a lot to where I am, which is Layton. I know that the DV advocate in Layton has access to some dollars to support housing.
Oh, cool.
So, and that's an extra resource on top of anything else you could get. Now, a community advocate is someone who is trained. Any advocate is required that 40-hour training, Bonnie, that we've talked about, before they can even provide advocacy. A community advocate works for an agency, and that agency has the contract with the state of Utah to provide DV services. Now, I've had this discussion with people all the time who will say, well, I'm not a DV advocate. And I'll say, are you arming yourself with information to know how to talk to somebody? Well, yes. Guess what? You may not be certified in somebody's program, but that doesn't mean you aren't a DV advocate. You are, when you recognize it and you try to help. DV advocates at the systems or a community level are excellent advocates. They're usually the gateway into the shelter. So you probably are going to get one. They will help you set goals for what you need to do to get yourself safe. They cannot disclose information about you to anyone.
Okay, so they have privilege.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know.
So just knowing the difference, one is not really, I think the systems advocates I've seen do amazing work, but the community advocates I see do amazing work too.
Okay. Well, we've covered a lot of ground.
I know. Probably nothing you really always wanted to know, but
No. This is great. We're answering all of the main questions. The next question is, what resources are available to a victim?
Well, if you don't know resources, I would suggest you start out with the hotline.
Okay.
And the hotline is going to refer you to the contracted agency who has the shelter, who you can then talk to. So that's probably your main big resource. If you're not ready to go there yet, if you need to do something to sort of, strengthen yourself, because I really don't like the statistics that say that it takes a woman approximately 9 times to leave before she actually stays away.
So
to me, that statistic is deplorable and should not be happening. And I've wondered why it does. I think sometimes shelter life is really hard and you realize, I'm just going home. I do have some friends in Salt Lake who have gone to Israel and learned about a model called the Bitnome model. And they have purchased a house in Salt Lake and are about ready to open it. And when there is an abusive situation, it's where the man goes so that the women and children stay in their home. It's an interesting model.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
flipping it on the head. How do you get the man to leave? Is that a court
Court order? Sure, court order. Usually on the protective order that mandates that he go there, because then the judge also knows he's getting appropriate treatment. I see batterers end up in court and the judge will say anger management or something along those lines. But in Utah, we don't tolerate that. We have an evidence-based tool in Utah that we use with abusers that we can then tell the judge, this is the level of treatment they need. It's not anger management. It's not a million weeks. It's 13, 14, 15 weeks of this program.
Wow.
And those programs are approved.
What's that program called?
It's an assessment that individuals who have contracts to provide services for, we'll just call them the aggressors, okay? It's sort of a trauma-informed way to say it.
Okay.
Aggressor. If the court orders them to get an assessment, which is what we want to have happen, there are individuals throughout the community attached to programs for treatment providers. They can all do that assessment.
Interesting.
And then that assessment goes back to the judge and what recommendation of treatment there is. And the judges say, thank you, because they don't feel like they're in a position to be deciding. We already talked about the fact that they're on their best behavior when they're in court, usually.
So is there help for the victim? Is there help with, one of the reasons why we don't leave, right, is mental health, is self-confidence. Oh,
yeah. I'm glad thanks for pulling us back.
So is there help with building that confidence and that, getting to a point where you're like, I'm strong enough now. I can see my worth. I can see that I'll be okay to go. I'm working on a program, you guys. This is a sneak peek into Come Off Conqueror, but we're working on a program to get you there, but it's not ready yet. But one of my goals at COC is to provide a way for women who are in toxic situations to get strong. You know that you're worthy of being safe, of worthy of being happy, of worthy of having joy and a normal life. But it's not ready for prime time. When it is, I'll update this video and I'll put the link below. But in the meantime, Debbie, is there anything that already provides help like that?
I would say that most of the DV agencies offer support groups. Yes. Sometimes it helps a victim be in a support group to listen to other women about what's happening to them, what they've been able to do that's successful, what they've done that has not been so successful. It helps you kind of gauge, again, your situation. Now, how do we keep you from going back after you've maybe been firm enough to say no more? That is going to require that you get linked in with something that's going to let you address, now listen to the way I say this, let you address how you react to trauma. Because returning to your abuser is a reaction to trauma. So you want to be talking to a therapist clearly about the fact that you would like something that is trauma treatment, that you know you have reactions that are based on being triggered by things that happen to you. And you'd like to find a way to have those not get in the way of your thought process.
That's big and will be super helpful, because in order to break that pattern, in order to break that cycle, you have to identify what triggers you to go back into the cycle.
Can I talk about the brain for just a minute?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I'm really not a neurobiologist. I'm a clinical social worker, but I love neurobiology now that I've learned some things. And if you think about viewing a brain, you don't have to have a perfect view of the brain. I just wanted to see that you've got a front part, a middle part, and a back part. That's good. Your front part is where you do all your rational thinking. That's where you can do your problem solving. That's where you go when that's where your kids go when they're doing math problems. But for you, it's problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that you have to get information to that front part. Mm-hmm. And the trauma reactions are stored more in the middle brain.
So your limbic system, right?
Yes, right. And so there's a little, like I call it a smoke detector next to your amygdala that gets disrupted very easily. It finds it very hard to determine if something is safe or unsafe or true or untrue. And it definitely impacts what gets shoved out to your frontal cortex.
Mm-hmm.
So people get stuck in their amygdalas. That's what I say. You're stuck.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to be involved in some therapy that will allow that information to safely be processed. And when I say safely be processed, I mean that anybody who's helping you with that would not be insisting that you relive the trauma that got you there.
Mm.
So in other words, if you're doing that, you're talking about other things that trigger the same kind of response.
Okay.
Other things that feel more safe than talking about the night you got beat up. It doesn't serve anything to talk about the night that you got beat up. That's going to remain in your amygdala. But if you're processing other things safely that cause the same trigger, those things can resolve and can reduce the symptoms of trauma reaction.
How do we do that? Does EMDR work for that? Like, what are some of the processes that work on releasing them?
I find when I talk with my colleagues that they have different approaches. I'm always checking in with them to be sure that they're being trauma focused and that they're not doing things that cause you to have to relive. I mean, that's something you could ask a therapist. What would be your approach in helping me with trauma? Because some therapists are very effective with helping you do things like deep breathing, other things that keep you from going into the fight or flight part of your brain where everything shuts down, or staying in the amygdala where problem solving does not happen. In fact, the amygdala is a horrible historian. So when the police say, well, what color of shirt was he wearing, or what time of day it was, and you start saying, I don't know. Women have been accused of making up the fact that they were raped. Yeah. But the police have now learned that if you give them some space for that to move from the amygdala to the frontal cortex, they can tell you a lot more information.
Right.
So if you have a therapist who is skilled enough to be thinking about the brain that way and has a plan for how they're going to do that, you certainly can do that. And it would probably be very helpful, especially in conjunction with a support group.
Absolutely. That sounds wonderful. Okay. So we've talked about mental health resources. We've talked about systems, the DV advocates, the shelters. Now, what about people who maybe don't have access to money, because a lot of times that's a part of the abuse.
Right.
They still need to eat and they still need to take care of their children. When you get hooked up with an advocate, I assume that there's resources for getting you food stamps or into a pantry, like housing, like let's talk about some of those basic necessities.
Yeah. Well, in general, in the community, you can get access to food resources, food supports. We have this amazing number called 211.
Yes.
If you call 211 for your area, they will tell you where can you get where can you start the process for housing, if that's what you're going to do. And I say process because
it takes a while.
It takes a while. And also, that's a nice thing too about a shelter, is sometimes the shelters are directly connected to an apartment situation that you can then move into as you're making your way into what you're doing. So food, shelter, they can link you up with medical resources. If you don't have insurance and you need to get something like Medicaid, where's my flyer?
What about like employment and daycare?
I was just going to tell you about that.
When I used to run community Christmas, one of my favorite parts that we instituted a few years ago was our resource center.
Mhm.
And we tried to make sure that we covered all the bases. We wanted housing, employment,
Yeah.
daycare, DV stuff. We wanted everything represented.
Yes.
And because
My dream is to have a community-based family resource center
yes,
where if you walked in, no matter what your concern was, maybe that person's right there and say, here, talk with this person right now. Or we know that so-and-so can do that. Let's make a phone call and make sure you get an appointment. That's my dream. But in the
I do.
meantime,
I'm right there with you, sister.
in the meantime, there's something kind of close to that was created in Davis County. That's where I'm just going to lean. And they don't know it, but they began to create a family resource center. And the reason they did it is because they were concerned that people re-entering life after being incarcerated had no idea what to do.
Yeah.
So they established this something called a re-entry fair, a re-entry fair. And so I went to this re-entry fair on purpose to see who is there and what they're doing. And they always have someone there who can link you in with workforce partnership if you need to talk to somebody about job. They can also link you in with applying for Medicaid if you are going to need that as a resource, and SNAP, or food stamps. The person who actually can help you with that should be in the room. So basically, the tables are like in a U shape, with people sitting around them, and you should be able to walk from person to person to see what they offer. And you don't have to be a DV victim. But here's what I said. First, I got on their coalition because I really wanted to see what they do. And I said, but what if I send a family there? What if they're not reentering from incarceration? Will you turn them away? And they said, absolutely not. We won't serve a minor coming in there by themselves. They would have to be with an adult. And they said, no, we would never turn anybody away. So I've started sending families there just to try it out, to see if they get what they need. The entry fair happens every Thursday from 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock. So it's just a short window of time. It is, I'll give you the address, 380 South, 200 West in Farmington.
Where is that? I know where Farmington is. I just mean, I'm trying to think of.
It's on that road that is kind of wonky, where if you keep going straight on it, you end up on the freeway.
Oh, yeah.
Does that kind of make sense? Yeah, it's kind of a weird road.
The frontage road that
something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, Safe Harbor is always almost always at that community fair.
Oh, good.
I mean, it's a labor of love for agencies to send somebody.
Yeah.
Sometimes I go there.
Go check it out.
Sometimes I go there just to represent Bountiful Food Pantry.
Yeah.
Because they don't have anybody they can send.
Yeah.
So I want them to know about the pantry and also how to get access to a food voucher.
Well, you guys, as we've been talking about the resources, one of the goals of COC is to have a resource page on our website. I'll link to that down below once it's ready. But we have, I've been working on compiling a list of so many different things. Unfortunately, because I am in Utah, I know mostly just the Utah things. But if you're not in Utah, you can look at the types of things we have and then just do a Google search for that type of thing in your area.
Or call the 211 in your area.
Yes.
It's the same number.
It's run by United Way, right?
Depends on the state and the organizations. Like, for example, in California, it's not United Way.
Oh.
It's another group in Southern California.
Oh, cool.
And then there's somebody else in Northern California.
But every state has a 211.
This is how good it is. I needed resources in Hawaii. So I called 211 and said, how do I call the 211 in Hawaii? Because 211, you hit it, it knows where you are.
Location, right?
Yeah, I'm not in Hawaii. So they helped me be able to link with the 211 in a different state.
Oh, cool.
So
that's wonderful.
Yes.
Okay. All right, Deb. Last question for you.
Yes.
We have eaten up a lot of your time. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry it's taken so long. I hope this has been.
This is we've hit on pretty much every single question that I can think of that I get asked about this subject. And again, if you have more questions that we didn't talk about, put them in the comments, send me a message through Facebook or an email.
I could talk about this stuff all day long.
Yes, you could. And I'd be happy to reach out to Debbie on your behalf. Last question is, if there is one thing that you want people to know who are in this situation, the biggest takeaway or the biggest lesson that they can learn, what is it?
I would say the biggest takeaway for you, if you are starting to notice that you're in a situation like you are, the first thing you're going to want to probably do is isolate yourself, which is exactly the opposite of what you should do. You need to make sure that you have social connections with other people who can get to know you, and they become like a mirror for you about what's really happening. Plus, they're the resources that you may need later. So assess your situation. Don't isolate. I know it's scary to think about doing it. Realize that leaving and what you've been in has created a trauma, and that many of your reactions are trauma reactions, and that you need help to not do that. And Bonnie, you had mentioned EMDR, which is my particular passion. That is a trauma treatment where it's called eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Mm-hmm. And it is a process where it does exactly what I told you. Helps you focus on something that triggers a trauma response, but feels like a safe place to be. So Bonnie, if you thought of an incident, I'd say, Bonnie, on a scale from 1 to 5, with 5 being very hard, back it down. Do you have an incident that's maybe a 1 or 2? And then we process that one. Mm. And the theory behind the reason that it works, it is an evidence-based treatment, is that if you've ever seen somebody at night sleeping and they're in REM sleep, you will see their eyes moving back and forth underneath their eyelids. Mm-hmm. That is your brain processing your day and parking information where it needs to be. Is this something you're going to need to access soon? Can we put this in memory for now? Your brain is amazing that way, which is why if you go to bed with a problem and you wake up in the morning and you have a solution, well, guess what? You basically did REM sleep EMDR. That's why REM sleep is really important.
Yeah.
Trauma response can be dealt with effectively by simulating the REM action of your eyes to help you park it.
That's beautiful. Super helpful. We got there. We got to the EMDR.
All right.
Yay, we got to put it in there.
I almost forgot about it.
I do want to do a whole video just on EMDR. And even I think it'd be so cool to do a practice, like show a demonstration. So guys, look for that. Once we finally do it, I'll link it down below. Thank you so much, Debbie. Like this has been so informative. I feel like my mind is
How's it? Okay. We're not drinking out of a fire hose. We're okay.
No, it's good. And we're going to take this and chunk it out. So there's little videos and stuff like that. So you're amazing. Thank you so much. You guys, she said, don't isolate yourself. Yeah. So if you feel like you need support, please join our Facebook support group.
Perfect.
We meet monthly. Every fourth Thursday, I believe it is. There's 2 different times that you can join us. The information's on our Facebook group. It's a safe place to go and you can be a wallflower and just hang back and watch everything going on, or you can be active and vocal. Use join to the level that you feel comfortable. I try really hard to make it a safe and loving space. It is faith-based, so you are going to hear a lot about God and his love for you, but so is this channel. So hopefully by now you know that he is a big part of my story and a big part of the member stories in that group. We rely very heavily on him for helping us change and improve and make our lives better. So with that said, I want to leave you with my love for you and my sincere concern that if this video has touched you and you're realizing at this moment that you've been in a snow globe and it was just pushed off, I want you to know I understand that feeling. Mm-hmm. I know how scary it can be to be in that moment. It's not easy to realize that you're dealing with something so big. You're not alone. Reach out to me, reach out to our group, join us. I can help you process these feelings. Talk to a friend, reach out to a family member, get help. Do not stay in this moment by yourself.
Find someone you trust and talk to them about what's happening to you. Not just for them to tell you what to do, but to hear yourself say the words and think about what's happening.
Because like Debbie said earlier, once you see it, you can't unsee it.
That's right. Yeah.
And it's not safe to go back to denial. So please reach out to someone that you care about. And if you can't think of anyone, I will gladly be that person to listen. And I will help you make a plan for who to talk to next. I love you sincerely. God loves you. You are worthy of love and happiness and joy, and you are enough. Until next week, guys, God bless. See ya.
Thank you so much for listening.